Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study. As we study the book of Proverbs, we are in chapter 1. We're going to dive right in. The last couple of sessions, I've been kind of doing some kind of background and sort of setting the stage as we get into the book of Proverbs. It is teaching us wisdom, right? But it's also warning us against foolishness. So the wise versus the fool, okay? And both wise or fool, they are both people who, well, the wise, the wise, a wise man believes in God. A wise man believes God. In other words, God says, don't go down that way, it's dangerous. He believes him. A wise man obeys God. He believes him and then don't go. Now, a fool, as Proverbs is going to contrast and spell out, a fool is a person who doesn't believe in God. A fool is a person that doesn't obey God. A fool is a person that doesn't believe God. And this is how Proverbs is going to teach us about wisdom. So it not only teaches us about wisdom, but it also teaches us about a fool. So the question is, what are you? Which are you? Okay, which are you? And of course, your actions always defines that. I could tell you how wise I am all I want, but my actions speak louder than words, as we used to say. So let's get into it. Proverbs chapter 1. I'll start at verse 1 again and then read through. We covered 1 through 7 only because it kind of gave us what Proverbs is going to be about. In other words, he's telling us, hey, this is what the book is going to be about. Again, the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. For learning what wisdom and discipline are, for understanding insightful sayings, for receiving wise instructions in righteousness, justice, integrity, for teaching shrewdness to the inexperienced, knowledge and discretion to the young man. A wise man will listen and increase his learning, and a discerning man will obtain guidance. For understanding a proverb or a parable, the words of the wise in riddles. And then he says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and discipline. So again, he's going to really explain that. The word proverb is a very short, um, it is a short, wise saying, okay? And then when he says riddles, don't think about the riddle sometimes you see, riddle me this kind of things right here. As they're using the word riddles. Hold on, let me do this here. I told you let's define the term riddles and proverb. Okay. Come on. All right, so first, let's do this here. This application here is slow. Excuse me, slow. Okay, come on. All right, so I'm using dictionary.com. Okay, so verse 1, a short popular saying, usually unknown in ancient and old, that expresses effectively some commonplace truth or useful thought, and then adage, saw, okay? In a wise, saying, or precept, detected sentence. Okay, you get the gist there. Let's look at riddles. Okay. I don't know if I'm going to use this on my computer here. It's very slow. Very, very slow. Okay. So a riddle is a question or statement so framed as to exercise one's ingenuity in answering it or discovering its meaning. All right, so that's all I want to get with that one there. All right, so let's get back to Proverbs. So, verse 7 says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, and fools despise wisdom. Verse 8. Listen, my son, to your father's instructions, and do not reject your mother's teaching. So right here, he starts off by speaking to children. And right away, notice he says children. So here's the responsibility of children. Sometimes we kind of, and by the way, let me say this. Obviously, not all children will have wise parents. Okay? So when we go through this here, understand the generic application of what he's saying right here. I'll say this for those of you who do not have wise parents. Seek God. For example, my father was not in my life. And I remember a number of years ago thinking about that when I became a Christian. And the thought came to me, but God is my father. And as I read his word, then in a sense God has always been, but certainly stepping in as my father, thus listening to my heavenly father instructions. So a lot of the Proverbs we're going to read are generic because not all apply to everyone. But where they apply, certainly children, okay? So it says, listen, my son, to your father's instructions, and don't reject your mother's teaching. I can't but help but thinking that Solomon is reflecting on his parents, his mother and his father. You can't compare them to our ideal of what family life is. Bathsheba did not see David as much as you may think. I mean, as far as women of the day, she probably did okay. She lived in a nice place and all that kind of. She was cared for, but it's not like they took walks and all that kind of stuff and went out on had date night. But anyway, but still, there was some wisdom there, and I'm wondering if he is also reflecting on that. But the idea is that listen to my father's instruction and don't reject your mother's teaching. And of course, this will be assuming that your parents are giving you godly advice. Verse 9, for there will be a garland of grace on your head and a gold chain around your neck. And no, he's not talking about you be a rapper. And yes, I'm being funny. Okay. But he is saying how it will enrich you. It will cause you to be enriched. In other words, the wisdom will produce riches, but from a wise perspective. Verse 10, my son, if sinners entice you, don't be persuaded. If they say, come with us, let us see an ambush and kill someone. Let us attack some innocent person for just for fun. Let us swallow them alive like Sheol, or the grave, and healthily as they go down to the pit. Now, since he's speaking to his son or children, just think about today, the bullying. Just think about how relevant this is today. Now, parents, so for sure you should be teaching your kids this, right? Because this is exactly what happens. You can get in trouble by following the crowd, right? So relevant, okay? Verse 13 says, we'll find all kinds of valuable property and fill our house with plunder. Throw in your lot with us, and we'll all share in our money. So that's the false promise. Verse 15, my son, don't travel the road with them or set foot on their path, because their feet run towards trouble and they hurry to commit murder. Now, I could tell you that by the time I got to my senior year, partially I was following this. I had friends that would say, hey, we're going to go steal a car. I'm like, I'm not going to have any parts of that. There was a time in my life that I probably would have gotten in trouble because I wanted to hang with the in crowd. I wanted to be one of the people, one of the fellas. He said, that's foolish. And had I done that, I could have run the risk of ruining my life, right? Getting arrested. Getting arrested, it's hard to go to college, get a job, yada, yada, yada. Verse 17. It is foolish to spread a net where any bird can see it. But they set an ambush to kill them. But they set an ambush to kill themselves. They attack their own lives. Such are the paths of all who make profit dishonesty. It takes the lives of those who receive it. Now, right away, again, remember, this is generic. It's true in some cases, but obviously it's not true in other cases. We can think about organized crime, where some of these guys live extremely long lives. But again, in the end, yeah, they get theirs one way or the other. Verse 20, wisdom calls out to the streets. Now let's stop. So he kind of switches thought for a moment now. And really for the next few chapters, he's going to talk about the value of wisdom itself. So understand here what he's talking about, that it's wisdom and the lack of it. Wisdom calls out in the streets. She raises her voice in the public square. She cries out above the commotion. She speaks at the entrance of the city gates. How long, foolish ones, will you love ignorance? How long will you mockers enjoy mockings, and you fools hate knowledge? Now, I could make a million applications to this. I could, but I'm going to refrain. But let me just indulge once. I think about certain political parties, how foolish they are to follow certain leaders that are foolish. I'll just leave it at that. Verse 23, if you respond to my warning, then I will pour out my spirit on you and teach you my words. Since I called out and you refused, extended my hand and no one paid attention, since you neglected all my counsel and did not accept my correction. Now keep in mind, this is wisdom speaking. Okay, this is wisdom. So the analogy here is the value of acquiring wisdom as opposed to the lack of value and destruction of not having wisdom. So in other words, he first starts off with the attitude. I called out. This is wisdom now. Hey, you need me. And you go, no, I don't need you. Verse 26, I in turn will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when terror strikes you. When terror strikes you like a storm, and your calamity comes like a whirlwind, when trouble and stress overcomes you, then they will call me, but I won't answer. They will search for me, but won't find me. Because they hated knowledge, didn't choose the fear of the Lord, were not interested in my counsel, and rejected all my correction. They will eat the fruit of their way and be glutted with their own schemes. For the turning away of the inexperienced will kill them, but the complacency of fools will destroy them. But whoever listens to me will live securely and be free from the fear of danger. Now, there's so many ways you can apply this here in terms of wisdom. There's so many ways you could apply this. That I mean, notice what he says right there. If you turn away, how many times we wish we could go back and having wisdom. Every single one of us can, right? Boy, if I had this wisdom when I was 20. But also keep this in mind that this is not about whether or not if wisdom was available to you or not. In other words, understand this is not about if wisdom was available to you or not. This is about your attitude. So in other words, I can remember one foolish mistake I made when I was young. And I said, well, you know what? I want to buy my first house. But I need to save up a down payment. So in my wisdom, I said, you know what? I'm going to send my wife down to live with her parents, just to save money. Now, we had an apartment. Wasn't the greatest thing in the world, but it was our apartment. It was our place. And you'll see why I say that in a moment. In my wisdom, though, I said, well, you know what? I'm not going to. I'm going to send my wife down, and they can stay with their parents, and I can send them some grocery money and all that kind of stuff. And but yet I will get rid of our apartment, and I will save up money and get our own place. Well, one, I did not consult with her parents. That was the first thing. I also avoided certain people who would have probably told me, bad idea. That's not a good idea. But the fact that I purposely, avoided them, why? Because I didn't want them telling me, advising me against what my scheme was. So guess what? Calamity came. Not in the sense of bad calamity, but the very first thing that happened was that my wife's mother was sick. So, there goes her not getting the job or whatever. That was one of the things that complicated my plans right away. Secondly, then I had to move in with some family members that did not turn out to be very pleasant. Now, I don't blame my family members in that sense, family members that I'm talking about, because it was me the one that made the foolish mistake. And I believe it came out to be almost about a year, about 9 months, that we was living in those kind of situations that wasn't good before we actually moved into the house. And then moving into the house wasn't that great because nothing panned out the way I wanted to. Nothing panned out, in terms of what I thought would have been my way. Nothing panned out. It was a disaster. That's what he's talking about right here, though. Now, he's also talking about a whole bunch of other stuff. My point is, it's not that wisdom wasn't available. What he's talking about here is the attitudes. You're rejecting what's available. The fact that you're not asking for wisdom, the fact that you're going to go in your own way. He says, well, when things fall apart, wisdom says, I'm going to laugh at you. You're going to call out for me, but then, and that's exactly what happens, right? When we do stuff, and the foolishness could be from the very simple things. How about this? Being foolish enough that when you sense things in your body, you don't respond. And then that turns into worse things. How about the pandemic? We just came out of the pandemic. How many people were foolish enough? And I'm saying, if you say, well, I don't want to get vaccinated. A lot of times it was the foolishness of it. We can go literally on and on and on and on and on with the fact that it's not that wisdom wasn't available, you just rejected the wisdom. And as wisdom says, okay, how long will you simple ones? How long will you hate knowledge? We could go on, I could say millions of applications here. Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome. I'll see you in the next